Hello, hello, lovely ladies. It is so good to see you. I am Dr. Chelsea Page, and I cannot wait to share with you all about sexual intimacy and what intimacy is, how to navigate desire differences. We're going to be talking a lot today, so I'm so excited. If you don't know who I am a sex and relationship coach, and I've been doing this for over 8 years. I used to be a mental health therapist. I'm now in the coaching world, so I've got a ton of background. I have my doctorate in human sexuality, and I basically help women with everything that has to do with love. So intimacy inside the bedroom, outside the bedroom, love with yourself, intimacy with yourself, really understanding how to navigate relationship and really show up in relationship in a way that feels good for you and for your partner. And so everything is running in such a happy and loving way. So I'm so excited today because we get to dive into the sexual intimacy piece today. So there's actually a lot of different areas that we could talk about with intimacy, and this is why I do what I do. I could talk about this for hours, but we are going to be here maybe about an hour here today. So watch all this in one chunk if you want to, or if you want to separate this out, you can hit pause at any time and come back to this. And if you want to know more information, you could just come follow me over in Facebook land, and I'll tell you more about that at the end of this too, but you can find me just Chelsea Page or Dr. Chelsea Page. It's all super wonderful. So first, what I want to tell you is what intimacy actually is. Like, what does that actually mean? And my whole business is all about intentional intimacy. And this is such an important thing because in our world, so many of us go through autopilot on things. So many of us don't really know what we're doing when it comes to especially relationships, which is totally not your fault because nobody really teaches us this stuff. It's kind of crazy. Like, did you really ever have a class around relationships? Maybe you did. I know for some of us, especially here in the United States, we would have a class where you had to kind of like play parent, and maybe I had a flower bag. I was supposed to use a flower bag and pretend that it was my baby and take care of it. I think that was the extent of any education. We had one class on sex education, which was really about like, this is a penis, this is a vagina, periods, like that kind of stuff, like more of the biological side of things, which, don't get me wrong, is super helpful and valuable. Like, we need to know, especially as women, like what exactly like a period is and what things are. But we have to go beyond that. We really have to go beyond that because relationships are all about just energy and emotions and connecting and navigating the dynamics in a relationship. And nobody really teaches us this stuff. And so when it comes to intimacy, I want to first give you kind of a framework of like, what exactly is intimacy and what is what would the word be? Just what is the healthy outlook of what intimacy actually looks like in a good relationship. And to start off, I want to draw you a little diagram. I'm like super fancy. I got like a little whiteboard over here. So, someday I might upgrade to like a really fancy thing, but I don't think so. I'm just going to use my little whiteboard. So this is going to I'm not going to go into all of the pieces of this. This is the intentional intimacy pyramid, really the 4 pieces that you want to look at in relationship to make sure that everything is running really well. And then I'll show you when we dive into the sexual intimacy side. So intimacy and relationship, it's all kind of one and the same. We have this intimate relationship. And when we are in a relationship with a partner, like my husband, Paul, we are in an intimate relationship, which means we are connecting on these different layers and different areas. So when it comes to a relationship, we want to make sure that 4 pieces are really all being touched on. So this is my fancy pyramid, and you can see my kind of light glare on that, but that's okay. So this is the intentional intimacy pyramid, and intentional meaning we are really active in it. We are focusing on it, and I'll go into this in a little bit because we can't do autopilot. Nothing good in our life comes from being on autopilot. Just doesn't work. Same thing with like losing weight and being healthy and it just anything in our life. We can't be autopilot. We have to be intentional. So, and again, I'll go a little bit more details about that in just a little bit. But so the 4 layers that we really want to have, this first piece in the whole intimacy. So intimacy, holy cow, look at my lovely handwriting. Intimacy, we want to have our self. So the self layer, this is something is so important when it comes to relationships, because if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, if there's not the base, the foundation of a relationship with yourself, then everything else is going to be all wobbly and wonky. It's going to be really hard to be present and show up in the other areas of intimacy that is so valuable to being in connection with your partner. And this self piece, I used to be a mega people pleaser. I was married before and I totally neglected this part. I didn't know how to focus on myself. I didn't know how to include my voice, my emotions, like what the heck are my emotions? What do I want? What do I need? I didn't know any of that stuff. So when it came to these other layers, me and my voice wasn't included. And so this self piece is so key. The more this grows, and I grow this every single day. As I work on my relationship, I work on myself. As I work on myself, it grows my relationship. It goes hand in hand. Same thing for you, right? And if you have this, if you have like a little foundation of the self, like if we have this little mini pyramid, if we've got like a little self piece on the bottom, then the extent of our relationship is it's going to be hard to build up from that. So the bigger we have a foundation with ourselves, the bigger relationship we have with ourselves, the more solid it is, the more we love ourselves, know we're enough, understand our voice, our wants and our needs inside and outside the bedroom, the stronger things are. We have a stronger foundation. And we're always working on these pieces. So this isn't just like a one-stop shop. Like I said, every single day I'm working on myself, because the more this grows, the more the rest of it grows. So when I work on myself and when you work on yourself, and sorry, those glares, there we go, that's probably a little bit better. So the more you do this, then it's a lot easier to go up into these next pieces. So this next piece here is the emotional intimacy in your relationship. So we're not going to really dive into this today. So we're just going to be talking about the sexual side, but this emotional piece, we'll touch on this today because it's really key, especially for us as women. For a lot of us women, we need to feel a really good heart connection and emotional connection with our partner and feel really seen and loved and valued and wanted. And if we don't, then it's really hard to move into the physical world. So we'll talk about that as we move up here in these pieces. But we want to be always attending to the emotional intimacy. And again, the self piece is so important, because if we don't know what our wants and needs are, and we don't know then how to communicate that to our partner, then it's going to be bad news bears, right? It's going to kind of come crumbling down. And so we want to have this foundation to be really strong and really powerful too, okay? So this next piece here is physical. And I'll put in the last piece. So these top two pieces is physical and sexual. So, and we'll get into this too, physical intimacy is very different than sexual intimacy. And often these pieces kind of get grouped in together in the same pot, which is really tricky because this is going to impact how you're going to be showing up sexually. And again, we'll be getting into this, but I want to give you kind of this framework to really go off of. So when we have this foundation with ourselves and we have a good foundation of emotional intimacy, then it's a lot easier to say, oh, we're getting messy here, but a lot easier to say yes to the emotional realm, and then a lot easier to go into the sexual realm. So we're going to be talking really a lot about the sexual piece and a bit about the physical, so you can understand the difference and create a nice energetic boundary around that, so you're not feeling like, this is what happens. A lot of us feel like anytime our partners touch us or say hello or gives us like the eye or kind of like rubs our legs, then we feel like it has to be sexual every time, which is totally not the case. So this is what intimacy, see, can you see how fancy I am? Intimacy is, and intentional being. We understand that all these four pieces need to be in good working order. We're always working on it. We're always putting gas in the tank, if you will, so that things can be moving forward in a positive way and be strong and grounded, and especially that self piece. This is one of the biggest things. Like if anything is ever going off or wonky in your relationship, go into yourself and see what is off here. What can I take ownership of? What is, am I not voicing my wants and needs? Do I not understand what I want and need in this? Did I get triggered? There's a whole bunch of pieces in the self piece. So that's just kind of a tidbit, go into the self piece. But we're going to be talking about, right, when we have an understanding of ourselves and emotional intimacy, that we can really get going in the physical and sexual realm. And I have my winter wonderland mug because it's snowing outside, which is super weird. It was 93 degrees Fahrenheit the other day, 2 days ago, and now it's snowing. Gotta love Colorado. I live in Colorado. So now that you understand and see that intentional intimacy pyramid, this is the framework, right? 4 pieces. It's pretty simple if you think about it, that we really want to have in good working order and focus on in a healthy, strong relationship. And of course, there's nuances to this. I go in really deeper into all these pieces in my programs and one-on-one coaching, but I want to give you kind of the bird's eye view of all of this, if you will. So when we have these pieces, right, the self is good, we have the strong emotional intimacy in the relationship. As we move into the sexual side, this is a piece that a lot of couples get hung up on. Sex and money are like the 2 biggest areas for struggles in a relationship. And we don't talk about this stuff. We really don't talk about this stuff. And I know, especially in the United States, and this goes globally too, I know there's women that are going to be in Europe and Australia that are listening to this. And really, it doesn't matter where you are, that often there is a lack of talking about the things that are actually really valuable and important to us. And we're not going to go into the money piece, but we're going to go into the sexual side of things. And what's hard though is if we don't have any conversation, as I referenced a little bit earlier on in this video, is there's really a lack of sex education that happens. And sometimes we get, the talk maybe from our parents, or maybe there's a class or 2 that you take in school, but it's not really focused on it all. And so what are we left with? Right? So think about it. Like, how did you learn how to show up in relationship, and what sexual intimacy, like healthy sexual intimacy, how to navigate this, what that actually looks like? For a lot of us, and what I often see is we have movies, right? We have TV shows, we have magazines, we have maybe our girlfriends that we may or may not talk to. And even if we are talking to our girlfriends, they only have the same amount of information that maybe you have, and grew up with the same type of beliefs and mindsets around what sexual intimacy, what is healthy and normal around that. So most of us grow up with just kind of this, we're kind of grabbing at straws here about what it needs to look like, wants to look like, what feels good for you, which is a big piece in all this. I'm always a big advocate of what feels good for you, because it's so important, especially as me, past people pleaser, right? If we don't do what's good for us, then what's the point? Really, what's the point? So when we have all these places where, okay, we have this lack of information, and yet we spend so much time and energy if we're in relationship with somebody else, and we're just kind of like trying to figure it out, right? We're in wing it mode. We're just like trying to make it better. Maybe we get into arguments. We're not really sure how to handle it. Maybe your partner wants more sex than you do. This happens a lot for women, is those sexual differences, is maybe you're not wanting to have sex as much as he does. And let me do a little asterisk here. So this is going to be hetero focused. I'm going to talk a lot of things about this, but you can also apply this if you have a same-sex relationship, or also if you are the higher desire person. If I talk to all pieces, it kind of jumbles it all up. So take the pieces that fit for you and your relationship, and you can shift it around. So I just want to kind of preface that to understand that I can't be talking to maybe everybody in their exact situation, but take what you will. This is kind of a buffet. Take what you like, and you get to leave the rest and take what works for you. So when we grow up in these places where we don't have this information, we're kind of grasping at straws, and what is normal, pornography, right? We have pornography to all these pieces, then we're not really given an accurate picture of what sexual intimacy looks like. And so we're left winging it and left thinking that, oh, am I normal? Is this okay? How do I handle this? And sometimes we grow up in shame, right? Sometimes religion unintentionally can shame us in our sexual selves, and what things are supposed to look like. And not that religion is bad, but there's not a lot of really good messages out there around sex and sexual intimacy. So we get all these really distorted views of what sexual intimacy looks like in a good, healthy, long-term committed relationship. And one of the biggest pieces that comes up, and what I want to really eradicate now, is some of the pieces of what is normal, what this looks like. And what is not normal is, all right, I remember it was a while ago, I actually recorded, it was a movie, you know, there's tons of movies with, you know, sex scenes. You don't show it all, of course, unless it's like porn. But there's these scenes, right, that happens where maybe there's a partner, they start kissing, they're passionate with each other, and, you know, they take off their clothes and someone gets pushed up against the wall and they're like, can't like unlock their lips from each other, and then they move into the bedroom and clothes are flying, and then, you know, the scene changes and you could see maybe it's a montage of like oohs and sighs and ahs and maybe a sweaty back or something, and then they're done, they're over, like someone rolls off of the other person and they're just like sighing in ecstasy, which is totally supposed to imply, right, that orgasm happened, and it goes like that. And the last time I recorded this, I actually should probably do this again, but it never usually changes. It was like 60 seconds. Like a 60-second scene that was here of when this sexual moment, this energy started, and then it ended. 60 seconds in a movie, and we don't even get to see all the pieces. And so we're left to feel like this passion, this, oh my gosh, I want to tear my partner's clothes off, that we feel is like supposed to happen. Also, that orgasm at the end is supposed to happen, that, and there's all this pressure of like have it go perfectly, it just gets all convoluted and becomes this distorted image of what sexual intimacy looks like. And this is, you know, having these pieces and not having this accurate information. You know, those movies, they're there to sell movies. It's entertainment. Entertainment is not meant for education. Entertainment is not meant for education of who we are and how we show up sexually and what sexual intimacy looks like in a long-term committed relationship. Right. So we have to be careful about where we're getting our information and what we're comparing ourselves to and what we're using as education material, right? And so that's why someone like me, why I love what I do, is to really tell you and show you like what is actual, like the realness of this. So a piece, right, we want to eradicate the movies, and also I want to eradicate the frequency of sex. This comes up a lot in the work that I do. Some people ask, like, what is the like normal amount of frequency of sex? Like, I only want it like maybe once a month, or maybe it doesn't really come up for me at all. And the answer to this too is the frequency of sex that happens for you and a partner, whatever feels good for you and for your partner, that's the right frequency. We can't compare ourselves. There's just no way. You are a unique individual and your partner is a unique individual. And so the relationship that you have with each other and the sexual relationship you have with each other is also unique. So we can't compare. So I will never ever tell anybody that, oh yeah, having sex twice a week, that's the norm. And if you are not doing that, then there's something wrong with you in your relationship. And I don't even know where that number came up in my head, right? But we put numbers to things, but it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And we'll get into this. And I could talk for hours and hours about this. So I'm going to kind of do like a hop skip over some of these pieces. So if you want to do deeper dives into this, then this is where some of my coursework comes into play. But I want to give you, it's almost like skipping a rock over a pond. We're going to kind of tap some of the pieces on top. So, because yeah, otherwise we would be here for days, 4 days. So the biggest piece, right, is one of the pieces is it's not quantity, it's quality. And what happens though is the quantity of sex, especially in the beginning of a relationship and the passion, like we see in the movies sometimes, this becomes, we think, our norm or something that we have to maintain for the long duration of a relationship. So at the beginning of a relationship, what often happens, and you know, this is, everyone's unique again, so it doesn't matter what this looks like for you, but what kind of happens at the beginning of a relationship is there's a lot more passion because it's new, it's interesting, you're learning about each other. There's so much like teasing that gets to happen because you're not maybe seeing each other all the time. You have to like wait a few days or a few weeks to see the person again. And it's just all new energy. And also your hormones are like through the roof, like everything is being activated. It's this like sexy cocktail of hormones that happens that gets things new and activated, that actually has that sexual energy feel a lot more heightened. And also what happens too when those hormones go up for you as a woman is, in men too, this happens as well, but talking to you ladies, is when that new relationship energy, it's this new relationship energy. There's other words like limerence that happens there, like puppy dog love. Like it's new, it's exciting. It's like, I've got a new toy here. This is so awesome. Not a new toy, but so we have, right, all this energy is up here. The hormones are up here. Everything's being activated up here. And all of the things, the negative things that impact you and your sexual self and how you show up sexually in a relationship, those pieces kind of go dormant oftentimes. Not always, but oftentimes they go dormant. Like any negative thoughts you have about your body might go dormant a little bit during that time because the hormone cocktail is like through the roof. So it's like, I don't care what my body looks like. I just got to have them right now. And they're like jumping his bones or whatever. Or, right, we have, past sexual history, any stress that might be happening at work that can negatively impact you if you're not being as healthy with yourself. Like there's so many things that can actually negatively impact how your sexual self shows up. But at the beginning of the relationship, those pieces often go dormant. So all of your sexual self is more like, wow, like jumping up and down on the trampoline, like all excited, like things are easy. Like you don't have to think about it. You have what is actually called more of spontaneous desire in that moment or during that time in the early of the relationship. And this could last anywhere from a couple weeks, couple months, couple years. Again, everybody is different in that new relationship energy. And so spontaneous desire, what I mean by that is the thought, right? You don't really even have to think about it. Like the desire, the energy comes up and then you act on that. Whereas when we'll get into this a little bit, what a lot of us women have is what's called more responsive desire, which means that we need to be more intentional and we need to invite our sexual energy to come out and play because it's not going to happen just like that. But at the beginning of the relationship, oftentimes with that new energy and the excitement and getting to know somebody and all the hormones that are happening for you, there's more spontaneity. You don't have to think about it. It becomes easy. And this is where when this newness of a relationship, right, starts to go into more of this not so new, right? I remember the moment where it kind of the rosy colored glasses started to go away a little bit in my own relationship with my husband, Paul, right now, is I realized how he blows his nose. Like there was one day I was like, is that really how you blow your nose? You start to see, right, the glasses come off. You really start to see the other person for really who they are. Like all the pieces, the good, the bad, and the ugly start to come up, not just the good. Because of course, beginning of a relationship, we are really, really kind of putting best self forward oftentimes in that. But as that kind of dies down a little bit, your hormones start to go down, the rosy colored glasses start to come off. Now the realness, the truth, the actual authenticity of who the two of you are start to surface up. And all of those dormant pieces, like I told you before, where there's this negative impacts that can happen on your sexual self, those start to wake up a lot, right? They're not so dormant anymore. So hormones are going down, newness is going down, and at the same time, all those dormant pieces, the negatives start to go up. So we're getting a switch here, right? If you can kind of visualize that graph there. So when this happens, this is where a lot of new relationships, this is when they end a lot of the time because that shift in that energy, a lot of people don't know how to navigate that. And even if we move past that and we still stay committed to somebody, we often don't know what to do with the change and the impact that has on the sexual side of the relationship. So what happens during this time, a lot of the time, is there is this change of energy, maybe the stress of your job, I'll use that as an example, starts to impact you more. Whereas before, maybe it didn't really impact you or you felt it, but you could kind of compartmentalize it and put it over here because that new relationship energy and all the hormones were super duper powerful. But the stresses and everything in life starts to peak up and has a negative impact on your sexual self. And so we have to be intentional in that. And hold on, gotta get my coffee on. So in this place, right, when the kind of that new relationship energy goes down and the impacts, the realness of life starts to come up, this is where your what's called responsive desire is going to be so key for you, like so key for you. And this is one of the biggest pieces and biggest changes and transformations and understanding for you and your partner to really navigate the desire differences that happen. Because that spontaneous desire, the more easy, like I don't have to think about it type of desire, oftentimes, right, if you have a male partner, because their testosterone is usually a lot higher, they still have that kind of cocktail of hormones still in their favor. This is why they, it's like it becomes easier. One of the reasons why, and we're not going to go to all the pieces, but usually, right, with the hormone of testosterone, they get that boosty boost. We as women, a lot of us women, we don't get that boosty boost. And I know there's always, what's the word? Exceptions to the rule, right? Exceptions. So when we don't have that testosterone boosty boost and we just kind of sit around waiting for our sexual self to want to, initiate sex or say yes to sex, this might happen to you where maybe your partner is kind of giving you the eyes or even says, do you want to have sex, or starts rubbing your leg, like, right? When they're starting to like want to take this into more sexual energy. But if you're not feeling it in that moment, then it just becomes like a no, right? A shutdown. I see this happen a lot in relationship is you're either shut them down with actual verbal shutdown of no, not right now, or this is totally not the time, or I'm not in the mood, or I'm not feeling it right now. Or we might even say that with our body. Like if our partner is, wanting to touch, maybe your partner's wanting to touch your leg or scoot closer on the couch, like you can sense it, and maybe you kind of lean over this way. Or you kind of give, right, the cold shoulder of body language to really what you're doing is saying no, right? You're saying no to your partner. But what happens though is if you just sit and wait around for your sexual self to want to come out and play, you might be waiting a long time. You might be waiting a long time, and you might be in that space right now. You might be feeling like, Chelsea, like my sexual self, like never wants to come out and play. Like, I don't even think I have desire. Like, where is my desire? Like, I don't have any desire, or I have low desire. But really what you're doing is you're expecting yourself to have the spontaneous desire that maybe you had as, maybe younger, right? When we're younger, we're a lot more like spry, right? Maybe when you were younger or the early part of your relationship, when that energy again was up here. But if you're expecting it to be like that all throughout the remainder of your relationship, you're going to be again waiting a really long time. And so when you activate what's called responsive desire, this means you want to warm your mind up, your body up, and your heart up to be more open to physical and sexual intimacy. And what I mean by that is you can't go, let me see if there's so many ways I can explain this. Let's use an example of going to the gym. I love like food, I'm a big analogy gal. So if we use like going to the gym, can you remember the last time where you just spontaneously wanted to go to the gym and then poof, you were there? And I know it's tricky right now, especially with COVID. But go with me here, but maybe even work out, even if it's at home. Like the spontaneous desire to want to work out, like, oh yes, heck yes, I totally want to go work out. And then all of a sudden you're like poof, working out. Doesn't really happen that way, right? This is where we get intentional, right? The desire is, I want to have a really healthy body. And so I'm going to take the actions to help guide myself toward that, inviting that energy there, setting myself up for success, like setting time in my calendar to be able to work out, because if I don't set it aside, then it's not going to happen. Because again, spontaneously, I'm not just going to want to work out, right? But I know I want to work out, so I have to guide myself to do that. I'm going to set out my clothes. I'm going to make sure I know what workout I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure I'm not going to eat like 5 slices of pizza before I'm meant to work out, because that's not setting myself up for success. So that's where the intentionality comes in, because you want to guide your energy. So what this would look like for you in your relationship is understanding that when you have this responsive desire, that you have to be intentional and really make sure that you transition your mind, your body, and your heart to be more open to that physical and sexual intimacy. So what this can look like, I'll use an example, is say, say tonight, I'll use tonight as an example. Say tonight, if I wanted to be intentional with my sexual intimacy, and I often tell couples to set a time aside, maybe once a week, to be intentional with their sexual intimacy. And I know it doesn't sound as sexy, or why do we have to set time aside? But anything important is worth our time. And if we don't set it aside, then it's not going to happen, because remember, spontaneity is not going to happen, right? Just like with the gym, I'm not going to just like all of a sudden work out 4 times a week without actually intentionally doing it, right? So say tonight, if this was my husband and mine's intentional intimacy night that I wanted to do, right? So if tonight was the night, I'm going to get really intentional, which means, you pre-plan, I probably wouldn't be recording this right now, maybe on that day, because I have a big day of clients that are happening. So I wouldn't want to overpack myself today, so I'm exhausted, because that's actually going to move my sexual energy and my openness to be sexual and intimate down into the negative. We want to put things up into the positive. Basically, anything that has you feel good, relaxed, energetic, open, just feeling vivacious in life is going to open yourself up to actually want to go play in the bedroom. And we'll talk a little bit about what to do actually in the bedroom if we have time on this. So this is going to be about an hour. But so you want to set yourself up. So if this was happening tonight for me with my husband, what I would do is not overpack my day. I would make sure that I worked out today, but not too hard, because I want to feel good about myself and energized, but I don't want to feel like freaking exhausted, like my muscles are super sore. I'm going to make sure I eat healthy, not just today. It's like a lifestyle, right? Having a good sexual relationship with your partner is a healthy sexual lifestyle, just like physical health, right? It's not just a one-stop shop. It's like an ongoing healthy lifestyle that you get to have. But if this was today, I'm going to turn up the volume on that. So I'm going to make sure, I'm going to shave my legs, right? I would make sure I shave my legs so I feel good. I'm going to make sure I'm not just grunging around in pajamas all day, right? I'm going to actually put on an outfit I feel good in. I'm going to eat healthy, even maybe right before, kind of leading up, I might take a bath or a shower. I love taking showers to kind of transition my energy so that I can, again, transition from the day, right, the work day, into being more open to that physical intimacy. Because there's no way, if I close this computer, to all of a sudden hop and go and be sexually intimate with my partner with, if it's spontaneous, then maybe, but with the responsive desire that most of us women have, that's not going to happen. Because when I close this computer, I'm still going to be in work mode. So I have to transition work mode Chelsea to sexual Chelsea. Same thing with you. You want to transition yourself from where you are to being open to that sexual intimacy. And yes, it takes work. And when I get passionate about stuff, I itch my nose. So I don't know why that happens, but it happens. So I'm getting all heated up about this. Heated up, passionate. Yep. So where was I? So transitions, you want to have those transitions, so key in this. And what works for you and what works for me is going to be very different. So you have to find what works for you to help transition your mind and your heart and your body over to being open to that sexual intimacy. So this leads us into, if tonight is my intentional intimacy, my sexy time, whatever you want to call it with your partner, if it's that with my partner, then I do all that transition and be as open as I can. But then also we want to be careful that what you do in the bedroom, this is another key piece. There's so many key pieces, but another key piece that I want to really give to you today is sexual intimacy does not have to be penetration and orgasm. Does not. And this is where we get to have also this separateness of physical intimacy and sexual intimacy, and they get to be disconnected. So this is kind of a mini tangent, but I really want to say this right now, is this happens a lot in relationship. And I mentioned this a teeny bit earlier, is if you are on the couch and your partner is wanting to be close to you, or maybe you're, washing the dishes and your husband comes up behind you and gives you a big hug and a kiss, what I see happen a lot for women is they energetically block that because they feel this pressure. It's almost like they kind of, oh, like, no, because they feel this pressure that if they give into, or not give into, but let go and release into the energy of, say, that big hug and that kiss, if your, partner comes up behind you and gives you a kiss while you're doing dishes, there can be this expectation that that has to lead to sex, that that has to lead to penetration, that that has to lead to orgasm, and what I like to call the whole shebang of sex, when that's not the case. We want to take away and separate physical intimacy from sexual intimacy and allow those hugs and those kisses and a lingering kiss or cuddling up on the couch. Those pieces, we want those pieces to be free and no strings attached to sexual intimacy. Because if we always think that a lingering hug or lingering kiss is going to lead to the bedroom every time, then what a lot of women do is they cut off all physical intimacy and don't lean into those hugs and those kisses from their partner because fear that it has to lead to the bedroom and has to go to the whole shebang of sex. So then your partner is like touch deprived, and especially if that's their love language, to have physical intimacy. Now we're cutting off one of these huge connection sources that we have. And because it doesn't have to lead to the sexual side of things, then we get to have freedom to play and freedom to lean into those kisses and those hugs. And that actually helps kind of feed that side of the relationship without it having to go to the sexual side. And I dive in, you might be asking like, well, how do you separate that? And how does that actually look? That's going to be way too big for what we have here today. I have that in my Ignite Intimacy course, but you get to separate that, and the energies of that can be separated. So it's almost like all sexual intimacy is physical intimacy, but not all physical intimacy is sexual intimacy, if that makes sense. So we get to separate that, which means it doesn't always have to lead to orgasm and penetration. So even though, so if we kind of swoop back in to, tonight, I've done all my transitions to really open myself up to, intimacy, to sexual intimacy with my partner as much as I can, or any physical or sexual intimacy, right? And say our time is like 8:00 tonight. So I've done all the things I can to be open to that. And we get to the bedroom, and there's so many different ways we can do that. That's beyond this lesson here. But say when you get to the bedroom and you're like, I'm still not feeling it. Like, I am not feeling like desire, right? A lot of women, right? I'm not feeling that desire. So this is where we want to be careful, because again, we have to continue that transition, right? When you like hop into the bedroom, it's not all of a sudden, again, like with the workout, poof, magic, like my sexual self wants to come out and play and like, woohoo, is jumping on the trampoline again. You want to keep guiding your sexual self to be open to that intimacy and warming up your body, really getting your body on board, having the touches, snuggling up with your partner, setting the stage for all those things, making sure the environment feels really good for you to be as open as you can. And you get to, what's really powerful is you get to really negotiate and talk about a lot of these pieces, right? We want to be able to have open communication around all parts of our relationship, including the sexual side. We want to talk about really what you are open to, because sexual intimacy, physical intimacy, that part of your relationship doesn't have to include orgasm and penetration every time. Because intimacy and that more of the touch and the tangible is all about connection. And I would say orgasm is just maybe a bonus, a cherry on top of that, but it's not required. Because the goal of, right, we want to get honestly away from goal focused intimacy. If we have the goal of has to lead to sex every time, right? Like that kiss in the kitchen or that hug in the kitchen has to lead to sex or has to lead to orgasm, that creates so much pressure. That's pressure intimacy. And that's going to shut your sexual self off like that, like light switch down, like, well, it's more like a dimmer switch, because we don't do light switches. Our bodies don't do light switches. So it's like dimmer down, like, all right, my sexual self is like totally run away to the other side. Instead, what we want to do, and what is so important of this side of your relationship, is you want to focus on the connection and the pleasure. connection and the pleasure and connection first. So you ask yourself, what am I open to tonight? So I would ask myself tonight, what am I open to tonight? Knowing that my body still needs warming up. I can't just all of a sudden jump into like penetration orgasm and expect all that to happen in a matter of like 5-10 minutes. You know, women, we need like 15-20 minutes, like maybe even more, to really warm ourselves up. Like, this might sound crass, one of my like analogies that I love, but it kind of sounds crass. But you need to warm us up like an oven. Like, before you put anything in us and before you expect anything yummy and delicious, like, you need to warm us up before you put anything in us. And we don't even need to have anything in us, penetration, right? So you have to warm yourself up, because all that responsive desire means, right, you're taking action, and then the desire responds to the action that you take, rather than expecting desire to happen and then action to happen after that. You take the actions first. But you want to ask yourself what you're open to. So maybe I did have a super exhausting day and I did everything I could to be as open as I could to being intimate with my husband, and it's just, I'm not feeling as open, right? And again, we're not expecting jumping up the trampoline, but you know, am I feeling neutral? Am I feeling negative? Am I feeling positive? Where am I at on that scale of desire? And we get to then say yes to whatever we're open to. So I might tell my husband, right, really, I would love to do is like a naked massage tonight, or maybe we could, do a suds up in the shower together. That's where I can say yes to. That's where my openness to physical intimacy is tonight. And remember, it's no strings attached. Just because we do a naked massage doesn't mean it has to lead to sex. Just because we suds up in the shower doesn't mean it has to lead to sex. Just because we maybe do a makeout on the couch doesn't mean it has to lead to sex. You kind of get in the theme here. It gets to be its own connecting and pleasurable piece all on its own without it having to connect any pieces. It totally can. And sometimes what happens, again, this is where we get the warming up, when you give yourself permission to say, do the naked massage. I'll use that as an example. And without any strings attached, so we totally took pressure off the table, and you're slowing things down with your partner, you're warming yourself up to this and really getting the mind, the body, everything on board, because we need all parts of us on board to really be open and say yes to this. And when all of that is happening and we get that responsive desire going, we're taking the action, then our desire sometimes comes on board, not always, right? More of that sexual energy comes on board. But again, it's not like fireworks or jumping on the trampoline or big. It's more subtle. Our sexual energy is a lot more subtle than what we really realize it to be. It's more of a whisper for a lot of us than like shouting from the rooftops. But if we're only expecting it to be shout from the rooftops, then we're actually not embracing our authentic sexual selves. So if we understand it's more of a whisper and warming up and transitioning in, and yes, being intentional with that, then having that time and that space and no pressure, then your sexual self can come out and play a lot more easily. And maybe that naked massage turns into more play in different areas, and maybe an orgasm happens and maybe it doesn't. Maybe penetration happens, maybe it doesn't, right? Maybe toys are involved, maybe it's not. There's so many different ways that you get to play and pleasure, because it's meant to be fun. It's play and pleasure. It's like our adult playground. It's like super amazing. But if we put up so much pressure and negative and expectation around it, then it does not become fun at all. And if we expect that once we go into the bedroom, we're supposed to be at firework level already, then we're missing the point. So you get to evolve what it looks like for you and your partner in each intimate time that you have together. So maybe tonight it's a naked massage with my partner, and maybe next week we suds up in the shower, and maybe that suds up in the shower actually moves to the bedroom because I'm feeling even more open, and maybe it does turn into penetrative sex. Who knows? That's the thing, is it gets to be wherever it goes, who knows, right? It's a pleasure, it's fun, it's exciting, and it gets to be fun. It gets to be fun. But it's how you approach it and how your partner approaches it too. And I'm going to, really, there's so much, and I'm going to check my notes here to make sure I'm covering all these pieces I wanted to with you today before I go into this last piece. Yes. So I hope this is helpful for you. So we will be doing a Q&A in the group too, so I can answer more of these questions, and I'm excited for all the questions that you ladies have, because again, I'm kind of skipping over and I'm going kind of fast here. So this last piece that I want to give you is, so you might be telling me, okay, Chelsea, so if I do all these transition pieces, if I get really intentional and my partner and I are really collaboratively working on this and doing everything that we can to have this healthy sexual lifestyle that we have, because again, it's a lifestyle, not just expecting it to pop up here and here and here, right? It's like, if I work out once a month, it's not really going to make for a healthy lifestyle, right? And if we are, and I'm going to be careful with that because I don't want to tell you again the number that is appropriate for your relationship. It's whatever feels good. But we want to have, really, it's more of that consistency that happens. And the consistency gets to happen, especially if we don't expect it to be sex every time. So consistency meaning, okay, we have hugs, we have kisses, ooh, we have that naked massage. And the next week, maybe we do have the whole shebang of sex. And then maybe the next week someone gets sick. So we're not really being as physically intimate, but we're sitting next to each other on the couch and watching a show. And then the next week, there's more hugs and kisses. There's holding hands, because that doesn't have to lead to anything. There gets to be this continuity and this consistency of physical connection, knowing it doesn't have to lead to the whole shebang of sex every time. A healthy, intimate relationship with your partner is that consistency. And so what happens, right, is I'll go back to, you might be saying, okay, Chelsea, if I do all these things, if I transition in, and what if I still, maybe it's our night to be intentionally intimate. And again, it doesn't have to be the whole shebang of sex every time. Take off that pressure. If I get to that time, and what if it's still like a big NO, like I check in with myself and there's nothing I can say yes to, and I've done everything I can to really be open, but I'm just totally not open right now. That's okay, right? We don't want to force ourselves or push ourselves, or what a lot of women do is they kind of give in. That's what I call like obligation sex. It's like, well, I might as well do this because it's just going to turn into a fight. Or if I do this now, I know it's been a few days, so I know he's probably going to be thinking about it, so I might as well do this now, right? We kind of do it as like a preventative or out of obligation, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that, because that's a dishonor to you, dishonor to your partner, and dishonor to the relationship, because I call it kind of like French fry sex. It's like, okay, you're there, but you're not really present and engaged. That's why quality over quantity is so important, because if you're only kind of skipping over, right, and kind of there sexually or just going through the motions, your partner can feel that. And it becomes just like a French fry when like the relationship is really hungry for physical intimacy. So when you're really present, you're really engaged, then it actually becomes this nice feeding into the relationship, and then the quantity starts to kind of go out the window, right? So where was I? Sorry, lots of pieces here. Thanks for following along with me. I hope this is helpful for you. So become this piece where it's like, what if it's still a no for me? I've done everything I can, and it's still a no for me. You get to have a no, but you want to be careful with how you say it. You totally get to have a no. This is one of the most empowering things we can have as women, is to have a no, but we don't want to just fling it around all over the place because we're not being intentional. So this happens for a lot of women. We say, no, I'm not in the mood, because we're not being intentional about it. Or you might just not have known, like so many of us, on how to actually navigate this. So you feel like, all I have is a no because I don't know where my sexual desire is, but we've talked about that. You transition it, you be intentional, and it doesn't have to be a fire flame every time. You focus on the openness of yourself. So if it's still a no, what you want to do, so this is something that's called the rain check. And I learned this when I worked at the Intimacy Institute, and this is something I think is so valuable and I want to pass on to you. And it's just so important, because if you just say no, or kind of as I talked about earlier on in this lesson, if you just say no or kind of give the cold shoulder, or it's like, hopefully he gets the hint that I'm not in the mood, what that does actually, checking our time here, perfect. So what that does actually is send your partner off into what I call intimacy limbo land, which is a really hard place, because if the no that they get is, okay, no until tomorrow, no until next week, no until next month, like no, never, that their inner anxiety system starts to come up. And so that no shoots them off. It's almost like they're like floating in outer space and they want to be connected to you, right? And again, if you are more the higher desire partner, you can, really shift this and apply this to yourself and understand your partner more. But when you say just a no and you shoot your partner off into intimacy limbo land, well, they have no idea when the next time they get to connect with you in a physical realm, it creates anxiety. And when anxiety gets created, they're going to come knocking on your door. They're going to be like, hey, how about now? How about now? Is now good? Is now okay? Can we have sex now? Can we be intimate now? And so they start kind of energetically chasing you down, which then has you say no even more. You're like, no, I told you no. Like, can you not see that I just had a really hard day? Like, why are you asking now? Right? We start to get frustrated and resentful and like all the negative things, and we get caught in this negative feedback loop. When in reality, right, what needs to happen is you can say no without shooting them off into this intimacy limbo land while honoring both of you at the same time. So what that looks like. So I'll use another example. So say if I walk out of my office here right now and my husband is like, hey, Chelsea, you want to have sex right now? Check in with myself. And is there any yeses in that? Is there anything I could say yes to? Maybe it's not sex, right? So first, what you want to do though, is you acknowledge your partner. So it's a 3-part piece for this rain check. You acknowledge your partner. We always want to acknowledge our partner and have them feel seen in their reach out, because whenever your partner reaches out for any type of physical intimacy or anything, that is what's called a bit of connection. They're wanting to connect with you. Even if it's not how you want to connect right now, they're still wanting to connect with you. So we want to see that and show them that we see that. So if using this in my own, me as an example, if my husband's like, hey, do you want to have sex right now? I would say, so we want to acknowledge, oh my gosh, honey, thank you so much for wanting to be close with me. That is so sweet. I love that. Or, you could use any language, but acknowledge, oh my gosh, honey, that I'm so glad you want to be close to me. Or, oh my gosh, thank you for telling me that. Anything to acknowledge, because that is automatically going to soothe their nervous system and go, I see you. I see that you've reached out to me to want to connect, right? It's literally like they're putting their hand out to hold your hand, or, it's like awkward. If you like go to like try to give someone a high five, but they don't high five you back, you're like, oh, right? You feel all awkward. So this is like, hey, I see you. I got you, right? I see you. Thank you. Oh my gosh, honey, thank you so much for wanting to be close to me, right? And then the second piece is you check in with yourself and you tell the truth of what's going on for you right now, right? This is not an excuse. This is the truth. So I might say, oh my gosh, honey, thank you so much for wanting to be close for me, wanting to be intimate. You know what? I just got done with recording this, wonderful lesson for ladies in this wonderful membership. And, I'm just exhausted right now because I really gave all my energy in for that lesson. It's the truth, right? Literally, this is what's happening. So I'm using this as a really good example. So it's the truth. That is honoring you. So you honor your partner and you honor you, right? So now both people are feeling seen in that. And then what you get to do is you get to negotiate, right? This is the third piece, either a different time or a different activity, right? So you get to say, oh my gosh, honey, thank you so much for wanting to be close to me. I'm so exhausted from this, lesson that I just did. I gave all my energy to that. And you know what, can you give me, so this is a different time, can you give me like an hour so I can maybe eat, because I need to eat because I'm hungry, and maybe get into some comfy clothes and just settle in after this. And then this is the key piece. Then after that hour, I'll come find you. And then let's kind of talk about what feels good for both of us. So you give yourself some time and you're not just pushing it off and just going like, okay, maybe I'll just say maybe later. Never ever say later, because again, that is intimacy limbo land. Your partner's going to be like later today, later tomorrow, next week, never, right? We want to put a nice container around it. So you give, right? Can you give me an hour? Can you give me 15 minutes? Today's not good. Can we check in tomorrow? So usually we don't want to do a rain check more than 24, maybe 48 hours, kind of depending on the lay of the land in life and relationship. Oh, excuse me, excite a burp. So you want to negotiate a different time, but then you have to be responsible for seeking out your partner at that time. Because if that hour comes by and I told my husband an hour and then it goes by And then it's like an hour 30 and like 2 hours, guess what's going to happen? That anxiety is going to start to go up again, and he's going to feel really weird and awkward and feel maybe even resentful, right? Well, she said she was going to come back and reach back to me at that time, and now she's not there. Should I go check in with Chelsea? Should I go knock on her door again? Right? Her energetic door? Should I go say hello? It just creates all this muddled mess in there. So you want to be responsible. You are the leader of your own energy, of your own life, your own sexual self. So you got to put on a big girl britches. And if that hour comes in, right, and you were intentionally, so I wouldn't go say, can you give me an hour, and then not do anything in that hour, just in hopes that he goes away. During that hour, if I really am saying, can you give me an hour, then I really am going to eat some food. I really am going to cleanse my energy. I really am going to transition my mind and my body into being as open as I can be at that hour time, right? And if I need more time, then I can say that, but I need to let him know. So you're going to negotiate a different time, or you can negotiate a different activity. Because remember, sex doesn't have to be just orgasm, or it doesn't have to be penetration. It gets to be whatever is pleasurable and connecting with each other and connecting to, right? It has to feel good, all the feel good connecting stuff. So I could say, oh my gosh, honey, thank you so much for wanting to have sex with me. That's awesome. You know what? I am so super exhausted from just my long morning and recording this lesson. You know what? But sex isn't really a yes for me, but I really would love, actually I want to take a shower. Would you love to come join me in the shower? Because I could totally say yes to that, and I would love to connect with you in that way. So I negotiated a different activity. And that shower, if he says yes, right, that shower gets to be the shower and connecting for just that connecting pod of time, and it doesn't have to lead, again, to penetration and orgasm, right? It might. Who knows? Maybe that allows me to transition even more and I become even more open, or it doesn't have to. So this is something you get to play around with. And even on, maybe it's your scheduled intimacy time and you've done everything that you can be intentional around, you can use that rain check as well if you want to, because it becomes this honoring of, again, your partner and you and the relationship as a whole, and not taking intimacy off the table completely, but you're understanding, okay, how can we connect in a way that feels good for both of us and also is in a good time for both of us? And if it's not, then you negotiate something differently. So it's something I really wanted to make sure I passed on to you ladies, and using that rain check. And again, it allows your partner and you to not be in intimacy limbo land. It creates a safe container to know that intimacy will happen. And because you are being more intentional, and because you understand that you need to transition your mind, your body, your heart, all these pieces, then it actually is going to open yourself up even more. And then you get to play even more in the bedroom or in the shower, on the couch, wherever it gets to happen, right? It doesn't have to be in the bedroom. So that's the last piece that I really wanted to share with you ladies. And I know that was probably a lot. I could even feel myself really talking fast here. I was just so excited. There's so much I wanted to share with you ladies. And I know there's a lot of questions that come up, and I know there's a lot of pieces that come up with this, and, but what about this in my situation? How would I navigate this? And so we get to answer some of those questions, and I'll be open to that. And even more so, if you want to deep dive even more into my world and be even more intentional with, the love that you have for yourself and the love you have in a relationship, and really understanding more of these pieces, I would love to have you in my corner of the internet and come into my neck of the woods. And, there's so much that you get to learn. I have a free Facebook group. I have courses. I have one-on-one coaching. I have like the whole gauntlet of everything. And there's something for you. And if you have any questions, let me know too, right? If you want to know any more about how to be more in my world. And I'm just checking my notes. There's so much I could still tell you. And I think we're at like about an hour right now, and a little bit more over that. And I don't want to overwhelm you too. So I hope you enjoyed all these pieces, and I want to leave you with, remember to be intentional. Remember to be intentional. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your intimacy does not have to be perfect, but we want to create, again, this healthy lifestyle, this consistency of being physically close and intimate with our partners, because it's a really, really valuable part of the relationship. And even though, right, it's up at the top, doesn't mean we want to neglect it, right? Even though they're like smaller pieces, they're smaller pieces, but they're small but mighty. That happens there. But we get to focus on, right, our self piece, that emotional piece, the physical intimacy and the sexual intimacy, and all gets to be this beautiful connecting place with your partner. And it doesn't have to be as hard as we make it out to be. As long as we are open and we're doing the things we can be to be open and be intentional and understanding, what helps you feel more alive, what helps you feel more relaxed, what helps create more of this open energy inside of you, then your sexual self is going to come out and play more. But if we're all stressed and all the negative, it kind of closes up our sexual self in like this little prison, which that part of us wants to come out and play and be all vivacious. And so such sexy energy and our feminine energy. And I didn't even touch on feminine energy in here. That is a whole other conversation. But I'm going to leave you, ladies, and I love you so much. Thank you so much for letting me be in your world and share all this information with you. And I wish you all the best. Bye.